Hey there, welcome to Fun Learn Talks, the podcast where we break down business, technology, and history into stories that sparks your mind and makes you smarter. I'm Anu, and we explore ideas that shaped the world from empires and entrepreneurs to code and culture. If you love connecting dots and asking why things are the way they are, you're in the right place. Let's get started with today's story. Meanwhile, back in China, the spotlight was on one man whose thoughts on ethics, governance, and social order were about to leave an indelible mark. This man was Confucius, or as he was known in his time, Kongzi, meaning Master Kong. Born in 551 BCE in Kyushu, within modern Shandong province, Confucius emerged during turbulent times. It was an epoch rife with violence and chaos. Yet through this, Confucius idealized the stable rule of the Duke of Zhou, whom he saw as a model ruler due to his moral conduct and attention to rituals. Confucius wasn't just a thinker, he was a doer. He tirelessly traveled far and wide, knocking on the doors of 72 rulers, seeking a post where he could turn his philosophies into practice. Eventually, he did secure a position as a minister in his home state of Lu, but his unyielding stance on ethical governance didn't sit well with the other court officials. His insistence on moral integrity, quite predictably, stirred the pot a bit too vigorously, leading to a conspiracy that ousted him from his position. What's fascinating is Confucius' take on loyalty. He saw it as not merely agreeing with the ruler, but as a duty to provide honest counsel, even if it was uncomfortable. Can you spare those whom you love? Can loyalty refrain from admonishing? He questioned. This idea of the critically loyal scholar official was revolutionary and would persist in the cultural fabric long after. In the private sphere, Confucius championed filial piety, respect, and obedience towards one's parents, encapsulated in the rituals of ancestor worship. The reverence for ancestral traditions wasn't new, but Confucius imbued it with profound ethical significance, which strengthened the societal fabric. Importantly, Confucius preached that a well ordered society hinged on everyone understanding and embracing their roles, women to their husbands, sons to their fathers, and subjects to their ruler. However, he acknowledged the complexities of leadership with a touch of wry humor. Women and underlings are especially difficult to handle, be friendly, and they become familiar, be distant, and they resent it. Confucius also advocated for the golden mean, a principle of moderation in everything. When he heard of a nobleman who took time to deliberate actions thrice, he wittily remarked that twice was plenty adequate. Always the realist, he observed, I have never seen a man who loved virtue as much as sex, a reminder that even great philosophers recognize the compelling nature of human desires. In his teachings, rituals held a special place, not as empty formalities, but as vessels carrying deep moral lessons. When challenged by his disciple Zug about the necessity of a ritual sacrifice, his response was poignant. You love the sheep, I love the ceremony, highlighting that the act carried greater symbolic weight beyond its immediate appearance. Interesting, right? Confucius's philosophy touched on every aspect of life, from grand statecraft to the personal dimensions of everyday living. Nothing was too minor or mundane. In our fast paced, oft confused modern world, reflecting on these ancient yet timely ideas might just provide the grounding we need. Let's keep going and delve deeper into how Confucius's teachings continue to resonate and shape thoughts and actions thousands of years later. Imagine an era where guidelines for nightgown lengths and dinner conversations were set by a single figure. Interestingly, Confucius wasn't just about deep philosophical leanings. He also waded into everyday norms, advising on proper attire and even mealtime etiquette. Yes, he had something to say about the colors men should avoid wearing at home and the importance of straightening mats before sitting. But his teachings also explored the profound influence of music, emphasizing its role not to incite desires but to honor gods and commend virtuous leaders. Now, let's delve into a telling moment, an apocryphal anecdote that reveals more about Confucius's character. Once separated from his students in a mysterious city, he was described by an observer as crestfallen, like a homeless wandering dog. When reunited, Confucius agreed with this somber depiction, a moment captured so effectively that it later prompted Nobel Peace Laureate Liu Xiaobo to quip that under a benevolent ruler, even a stray could transform into a protector. Following his death in 479 BCE, Confucius's wisdom didn't just fade into the annals of history, instead, it sparked a textual legacy. Two generations of his disciples collected his sayings into the Analects, a work monumental not just in its content, but in its impact, reaching countless people over millennia. This was not merely a book, it was a cornerstone of Chinese civilization. Speaking of legacies, let's pivot to Mencius, a storied follower of Confucius who lived centuries later. Much like his predecessor, Mencius wasn't just philosophizing in abstraction, he was meticulous in pairing virtues with emotional qualities. Compassion was linked to benevolence, scorn to righteousness, respect to propriety, and judgment to wisdom. These weren't just lofty ideas. According to Mencius, they were innate qualities that one needed to actively nurture. His political insights were revolutionary, suggesting that leaders were subject to the will of the heavens and thus their authority was contingent on their moral conduct. This brings us to an interesting contrast with another ancient thinker, Mozi, who lived around the same time as Mencius. Mozi criticized the opulence and complex rituals of his era, advocating instead for a society grounded in egalitarianism and universal love. Though his ideas were largely overlooked by the rulers of his time, they spark our curiosity today about what might have been if his ideals had been embraced. Meanwhile, Laozi offered yet another perspective, introducing an ideal of governance so subtle that the governed would feel utterly self sufficient, barely aware of their ruler's existence. Known for the Tao Te Ching, Laozi presented a view of life as a path, or the way, suggesting a form of leadership so seamless that, once the leader's work was done, the people would believe they had achieved it all on their own. Each of these philosophers, from Confucius with his detailed prescriptions for everyday life, to Mencius and his discourses on virtue and power, to Mozi and Laozi's radical reimaginings of society and leadership, contributed uniquely to our understanding of how ancient thought has shaped modern ideals. Their teachings, varying in approach but united in their depth, continue to resonate, offering insights not just into a historical era but into the timeless challenges of ethical leadership and societal organization. What's surprising is how these narratives from centuries ago still mirror today's dialogues about power, ethics, and governance. It's a rich testament to the enduring relevance of their ideas. Ideas that encourage us to reflect on our own values and the societal constructs we navigate daily. Interesting, right? Don't go anywhere. Let's keep exploring this fascinating journey through ancient wisdom and its echoes in our present world. Bruce Lee once advised us to be water, echoing the ancient wisdom of Laozi, a philosopher who truly grasped the subtle strength of water. Laozi described water's ability to navigate around obstacles, to adapt to any shape, and to offer life sustaining qualities without contention. Isn't it fascinating how something so gentle can also be so powerful? Continuing with Laozi's mystique, let's dive a bit deeper. The true details of Laozi's life are shrouded in mystery. We're not even sure when he lived, with the oldest manuscripts of his work, the Tao Te Ching, dating back to the 8th century BCE. His teachings were recorded on bamboo strips, and not in any particular order, which adds to the enigma. Laozi's influence is so profound that even centuries later, the poet Bai Juiji bewilderingly pondered why Laozi, a master of wisdom who advocated silence, ended up writing 5,000 words. Now, let's introduce Zhuangzi, another prominent Taoist thinker from around the 4th century BCE. Zhuangzi expanded upon Laozi's ideas with a delightful mix of parables and thought provoking anecdotes. One of his most captivating stories is about a dream where he becomes a butterfly. Upon awakening, Zhuangzi was left pondering whether he was a man who dreamt of being a butterfly or a butterfly dreaming he was a man. Quite the mind bender, right? There's also a fascinating encounter between Zhuangzi's contemporary, Confucius, and Laozi. Confucius, known for his structured approach to ethics and governance, sought an introduction to a royal court through Laozi. However, Laozi, possibly a retired palace librarian at the time, was less than impressed with Confucius's ideals. He summed up his advice by pointing out that just as a swan doesn't need a daily bath to stay white, humans don't need to overcomplicate their innate goodness. This brings us to an intriguing contrast between Confucianism and Taoism. While Confucian followers were fixated on the right actions and serving rulers, Taoists like Lao Tzu and Zhuangzi embraced Wu Wei, or inaction, advising us to go with the flow of life, much like water. Taoists also explored various esoteric practices, ranging from meditation to alchemy, and even aimed for immortality through unique methods like consuming special potions or practicing certain sexual disciplines. Another cornerstone of both Taoist and Confucian thought was the I Ching, or Book of Changes. This ancient text, like the Tao Te Ching, was originally written on unordered bamboo strips. It features 64 hexagrams that represent all possible states of being through combinations of solid, yang, and broken yin lines. Its origins are as mysterious as the text itself, making it a source of endless fascination and interpretation over the centuries. Isn't it amazing how these ancient texts and teachings continue to inspire and puzzle us to this day? The dialogue between the structured Confucianism and the freer flowing Taoism presents a rich tapestry of philosophical debate in Chinese culture, inviting us to think about balance, order, and the effortless power of simply being, like water. So, let's carry these thoughts with us. Ponder how to apply that effortless flow in our own lives, and maybe even embrace a little mystery along the way. Interesting, right? Let's keep going. As we dive into the heart of Chinese philosophical discourse, we encounter the I Ching, often revered as the ultimate book of wisdom. Its foundational concepts, yin and yang, Tao, good faith, and self cultivation, captivated almost every thinker in China up until the modern era. The interplay of yin and yang, these cosmic duality forces of dark and light, feminine and masculine, really illustrates the deep mystical roots of Chinese thought. But let's shift focus to a slightly different strain of thinking. Legalism, introduced by Han Feizi. Born during the Warring States period, his ideas sharply contrasted with those of Confucius. While Confucius believed in leading by moral example and saw laws as a prompt for people to find loopholes, Han Feizi took a more pragmatic approach. He argued that the essence of governing wasn't about moral leadership, but about laying down strict laws and enforcing them through rewards for compliance and punishments for defiance. The object of rewards is to encourage, that of punishments to prevent, he said. This perspective really lays the groundwork for an efficient, albeit stringent, governance model. Interestingly, Zhe Jinying, a contemporary writer, points out that if Confucianism forms the outer shell of Chinese imperial rule, then legalism is its heartbeat, the darker underside that is often less talked about but equally potent. These philosophical currents, Confucianism, Taoism, and legalism, didn't just coexist, they interacted and influenced China's societal and governance structure, creating a rich tapestry of thought known as the 100 schools of thought. Go. Now, that's it for today's episode on Fun Learn Talks, where stories from business, technology, and history keep your curiosity alive. If you enjoyed the journey, make sure to follow, rate, or share it with a fellow curious mind. And hey, we'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment or connect with us online. I'm Anu, and I'll catch you next time, right here on Fun Learn Talks. Until then, keep learning, keep wondering.